Wintertime is soup season, and for that you might need some instant vegetable broth. So if you buy that in the store and you look into the ingredients, you might find out that the first ingredients listed are probably salt, MSG and sugar. That's probably not what you are going for. You would probably rather have some vegetables in that part of the list. So how do you achieve that? You make your own instant vegetable broth, and I will show you how to make that. Of course, for your vegetable broth you will need some vegetables, and I will show you what I choose. So I have some garlic, I have a bell pepper, I have a root celery, and if you can't find root celery you can go with a stick celery. I would always prepare a root celery though, it has more an intense taste, but it also works with the stick celery. 1 onion, also 1 leek. You need some carrots, and you don't need a whole bundle of it. You will probably need like 2 of medium-sized carrots or 1 large. And you also need some Italian parsley. So this is from the fresh vegetables, and you will also need some sun-dried tomatoes. For the seasoning, you will need some caraway seeds if you want them. I'm always a little bit careful with it. Half a teaspoon of thyme, half a teaspoon of rosemary, and a bay leaf, and some nutmeg. So these are the ingredients. I will also say something about the machines or the equipment that you need. So the first step is to cut everything as small as possible, and it depends on your kitchen equipment how you achieve that. You could just, shredder everything by hand, or you could use one of these things. It will be difficult to use this on the leek though. You can just use a knife and cut everything as small as possible. So there are different ways to achieve that. I will use my KitchenAid for it. So I have this nice attachment here. Let me show you. And it works really well. So I have different things to put in there. And that's how I'm going to shredder all of my vegetables except for the sun-dried tomatoes, which I have to cut with a knife. But first let me clean all my vegetables, and then I will continue with the next step. Yeah, so I've already prepared some of my vegetables, and I'm starting to remove the skin from my root celery, and just so you see how that's done. You could also use your potato peeler for that, but it has a very irregular shape, so I usually go around like that, cut some of the bottom. And I have to cut it a little smaller because it has to fit into this machine. So I'm doing it like this. I will not put the onions through the machine, just for the simple reason that I don't want you to see me cry here on video. So I will just put it through this thing. Like this. And from the carrots I will just remove the ends like this. The leek can stay the way it is. I will cut the parsley a little later by hand. And yeah, let me start to shred all these vegetables now. Okay. Let's start with the celery. Now the bell pepper, oh, this one's too large. Okay. Yeah, so I shredded this all, and the leek is too soft to go through this machine, so I have to just cut it very, very finely. Okay, I add this to the other vegetables. Now the garlic. Actually, I can use the garlic in this thing here. Oops, it's easier. And the parsley. Right, and finally the dried tomatoes. So they are already dried, but they are still kind of mushy, soft. So let's take this amount, seems okay. So I cut these into smaller pieces and put them with everything else in the oven to dry. So I'll show you in a minute how I'm doing that. So this looks really nice, don't you think? So it's a lot of fresh vegetables here. And let me mix this a little bit. And it smells so good. Very nice. Okay, so now I'll take a baking sheet that I prepared with some parchment paper. And I'll probably need more than just one. So I'm putting this on this baking sheet, and I distribute it as evenly as possible. And not too thick, because I really want this to dry. And the higher it is on the baking sheet, the longer it will take to dry. It will take quite some time anyway, but you don't want to, have it too long in there. Maybe you want to use your oven at some point. Okay, so this is the first sheet. And my second sheet. I'll probably also need a third one. So luckily I have a convection oven, which means I can put several baking sheets into the oven for the drying. I'm not sure if that works with a regular oven. And look at these colors. It's so pretty. I love it. So and finally I'm also adding the garlic and the onions. And if you don't distribute all these things evenly to both baking sheets, it doesn't matter, it will be mixed in the end anyway, so don't worry about that. So in the oven now for several hours at 75 degrees Celsius or 168 degrees Fahrenheit. And while this is in the oven, I will stir this every hour or so. And the time it needs to dry depends highly on how small the pieces you cut are, how wet your vegetables are. So I cannot really give you an estimate. I will let you know after this batch how long it took me today, and maybe this will help you to get an idea. Yes, so here's now the result of the drying process, and it took almost 6 hours, so a really long time, but it's worth it and it smells fantastic in the house. So my next steps are now that I have to weigh how much I have here, wait, let me first turn on the scale, and I'll put this in here. And from here too. So, and I have here 146 grams of dried vegetables. Now, in order to know how much salt and sugar I want to add to my mixture, I need to calculate. I want 6% of salt added to the mixture and 3% of sugar. The sugar, though, is optional. So I am calculating the weight, which is 146 grams times 0.06. To calculate the amount of salt, which is 8.8 grams of salt, and I make it to 9 grams, so that is the amount needed. Okay. And for the sugar, this will be 146 times 0.03, which is about 4.3 grams roughly. And I will add like 4 grams. I don't want to have too much sugar in here. Okay. All right. I'm also adding the bay leaf, the caraway seed, the marjoram, and the rosemary, and I will also add some nutmeg. You can of course also use some ground nutmeg. You don't have to use the fresh one. Okay, and actually what I forgot to mention is that you can of course use other vegetables too. If you want to add some mushrooms, or what's the name of the other thing, parsnip I think, feel free to do that and make your own personal preferred mix of vegetable broth, instant broth. And so now for my next step, to make it really instant, I have to process it, and you can use something like a stand mixer for that, or a food processor like this one. Anything that can turn this into very small pieces. Okay, and I will pulse this now until it is very, very fine. Okay, now let's see. Oops. Always something falling off. Too bad. So here you can see what is left, and it looks quite nice. And I will now put it through a sieve to sort out the larger parts. Yeah, and so there's a little bit left here. I could still put it in there, but I don't want to. I think there's nothing wrong with having some larger pieces in there. Yes, and so this is basically all you have to do for making your own instant vegetable broth. And yes, it's totally worth waiting the almost 6 hours for the oven to dry the vegetables. It is such a fantastic and well-tasting vegetable broth that you can make with this now. It's great if you just want to zip on some broth on a cold winter day, or if you want to make a sauce, or if you want to use it for a soup. It has so much more taste than the store-bought version, and it's so much healthier. I used organic vegetables for all these things. And I can't wait to have a cup of broth tonight. And I hope you feel inspired to do this too and try it. And thank you for watching. I hope you watch my next video that will come up soon.